the understandings that come from the teachings along with the practice complete something. That there is an understanding of who you are, there's an understanding of what reality is, and then there's a practice. And in the practice, what we're doing is we're practicing calming the mind and relaxing the body. And as we do that over time, if we persist, if we're diligent, if we're earnest, if we're sincere, and we do that over time, regardless of the challenge of it, the conceptual understandings that come from the teachings become an experience. That instead of just having a conceptual understanding about who you are, at some point when the mind calms down and the body relaxes enough, you actually experience a direct witness of that concept. You actually experience yourself. You actually experience what you are as awareness. And that is an experience that's unavailable if you're in a constant state of tension and if the mind is constantly agitated, which is the condition that most human beings are living their life in. A condition in which there's a constant state of mental agitation, mental reactions, mental concerns, mental analysis, thinking all the time about life, thinking about what's going to happen, thinking about how you feel, thinking about your future, thinking about how you look, thinking about what you want, thinking about what you like and don't like. This is the life of the mental life. It's the life of the mind. And one of the things that occurs in this mental life is there is a character being generated. This character that you call I or me is being generated in a thought process. It has a name. It has a name. It has a form called the human body. And we learn very early on in life to identify ourselves as this character that we think we are. It's a function of thinking, and it's a function of memory. So that when a baby starts to get language, and it says dada or mama, it gets a big positive response. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And so the baby feels good, something good vibrations here. So let me try again, dada. Oh, another good vibration, right? So now you're being trained like a dog. Every time you do what's wanted, you get a treat. Right? And the treat is a positive vibration, a nice sound from your parents, a positive touch. So you learn very early on, this is the way, this is the life. And you identify yourself, and then they tell you, the parents tell you, oh, you are Joe or Frank or Brian or Steve or Mary or Sue. And they keep repeating that to you. They keep pointing at you and saying, you, Sue, you, David, you, Bob, you know, until after a while it's like me, Bob, right? And then you start to come to realize this Bob character is a word that when you hear it, it means you. It means this particular body. And then you learn, even though there are other Bobs, there's only one of this Bob. This is a special Bob. This is a different Bob. This is a separate Bob from all the rest of the Bobs. It's a separate Bob from all the Bobs in the world. It's a separate body from all the bodies in the world. And then you go to school. At home, this is wonderful because, you know, you have people there that give you plenty of attention and you can't do much wrong and all the rest of it. And then you go to school and you realize, wait a minute. There's one teacher now, and there's 15 students, and the teacher is giving attention to one student at a time, and the students that get the attention are the ones that seem to do things a certain way, like they stay quiet. They get positive attention when they stay quiet. Or they have the right answers, and they get positive attention for the right answers. Or they have a nice dress on and the other kids like their dress and they say that's a beautiful dress and the teacher says it's a beautiful dress. And you look at your clothes and say, well, these clothes aren't as good as their clothes. And so the shit starts, right? The shit storm starts, right? But you don't know it's a shit storm because you don't have anything to compare it to. So the way it's occurring to you as a child is this is reality. This is the world. This is me. This is life. And you begin to live the process of a human life, a human being. And it's not long before you realize that there are things that happen in this life that you don't like. They don't feel good. You know, like fear doesn't feel good, or physical pain doesn't feel good, or not getting what you want doesn't feel good, or a loud noise doesn't feel good. And so there are things that you like and things that you don't like, and the things that you don't like you avoid, and the things that you do like you seek. So your life turns into this process in which you're attempting to experience some satisfaction, some content, some happiness, some well-being, some peace. But it seems elusive. It seems elusive. It doesn't seem to be available much. It seems that, you know, when you get what you want, there's this gratification that we call happiness. When you don't get what you want, there's this disappointment that we call upset. And so your life is all about, you know, trying to manage this ever-changing reality, this challenging reality in which you are among 8 billion other separate selves in the world. And as you get older, you start to learn more about reality, about the world, about other people, and you realize that there's a lot wrong here. There's a lot of danger here. You know, that this physical body, if this dies, if this gets killed, you're gone. You're not here anymore. So now you're afraid of that happening. You know, and then you begin to realize that who you are as a personality is very sensitive and fragile. And you identify with the personality the same way you identify with the physical body. So if somebody says something that's mean to you, it hurts. You know, it almost feels like somebody puts a knife in you. It's an injury. It's an emotional injury. It hurts. So you want to avoid that. You know, so you want to play the game well. You want to play the game good, so you can get positive regard and avoid people who reject you. And so you start playing the social game. So, and it goes on and on like that, you know, and it just becomes more and more complicated, you know, that you start to play the game and you learn, well, more is better, different is better, so I got to keep getting more of everything, more money, more food, more clothes, more people attracted to me, more possessions. Or if more isn't working, then different is better. So I have to be different. Maybe I'll get some tattoos. Then I'll be different, right? Or I'll dye my hair orange, so people can't help but notice me. I'll be different, right? Or whatever. There's all kinds of ways to be different, you know? More, different, better. Or maybe instead of more, less is better. Maybe I tried more and it didn't work, so less is better. So I'll spend less money. I'll waste less. I'll become that type of person. So then I'll stand that way. Everybody will acknowledge that I'm good at doing less, having less. More, different, or better, or less. So these are all the games that we play, psychological games that we play in the world to try and maintain our existence, to try and maintain our value. It's a performance. Your life is a performance. That's what you learn very early on as a child, you know, that you're performing. And how you perform determines your value. That's why we have people who say, I am worth $8 billion. They literally say, I am worth $8 billion. And that doesn't come across to other people strange because everybody's evaluating their worth based on money, or they're evaluating their worth based on their physical appearance, or they're evaluating their worth based on their status or their position in the world. You know, how many people are below me, how many people are above me, and on and on and on. So this is an unworkable reality. It's madness. It's madness. And because it's an ever-increasing reality, I read somewhere that somebody that lived in the 17th century, compared to somebody who's alive now, what they experienced in 1 year, we experience in 1 day. So this is an ever-increasing complexity, ever-increasing information, ever-increasing pace. Everything's moving faster and faster, more and more and faster and faster. And it's overwhelming. So more people are falling out. More people are not able to deal with it, you know. People are already functioning at their maximum, and then there's a pandemic, right? And a lot of people just go, they're overwhelmed. They can't deal with it, right? Most of us, a lot of human beings are barely making it in terms of staying sane enough to keep functioning. It doesn't take much. Much doesn't have to happen for overwhelm to occur, and then you're suffering from a psychological or psychiatric disorder. You're suffering from ongoing fear, anxiety, or you're suffering from depression, like, you know, like you can't take it anymore. It seems hopeless. It is hopeless. It is hopeless. Human life as it's lived by most human beings is a hopeless endeavor. It's a hopeless endeavor, simply because it doesn't work. All you have to do is take a step back and look at it based on what I've just started to describe. And it gets worse as you get older, right? The body starts to come apart, you know, you're no longer part of the primary herd anymore. As you get older, you're less important. You know, the younger people are more important than you are. You know, the body starts to fall apart. Illnesses come, pandemics come, financial difficulties come. You try as hard as you can to do what you can in the world. But if your skin is black, you don't have an even shot. You know, if you were born in Syria, you don't have an even shot, right? So this is the condition that we're living in. You know, code name insanity. It's insane, right? Teachers who teach meditation often talk about it as a process to go sane. What do they mean by that? They mean that if you sit still and you practice this consistently day after day over time, and you let the body learn to relax, develop a relaxation response, and you let the mind begin to calm down, slowly calm down, that you begin to become aware of something that was unseen, wasn't recognized before. You thought all you were was a physical body and a personality just like everybody else, and you're doing the best you can. It's not going very well, but you'll try harder, or you'll find something different to do. You know, all the ways that the game gets played. But if you practice meditation and you commit yourself to it and you trust the teachings, see, this is the thing. The teachings are telling us about a possibility. The teachings are telling us that this business of considering yourself to be a physical body and a personality is a very superficial reality. It's not the whole truth. In fact, it is not the truth. Right? It's a condition that occurs when awareness takes on a human body. It's a condition that occurs when awareness comes into the human experience. And when that happens, in order for the human experience to occur, there has to be a separation from the natural state. There has to be a separation in the sense that you're coming into a world in which there's time and space, in which there are an appearance of separation, and this is called the human life. This is the human life. And without a recognition of the truth, a human life is a tragedy. Without a recognition of the truth, a human life is a series of incidents that involve suffering and disappointment, right? Until the body wears out and drops. And that's basically it. So this possibility that the teachings talk about is they say that if you practice sitting still and being silent, that eventually you'll start to become aware of your true nature, which is awareness itself. It's awareness itself. It's what the baby is before the baby has language, before the baby's told a name and told that it's a body. The baby's free. It's free awareness. It's gradually identifying that it has a locality called the body, right? But even then, it's still far freer than it will be when the personality is fully formed. And so the baby is in a direct relationship with what's happening called life. If the baby's diaper is wet, the baby cries. Response. If the baby's hungry, the baby cries. If the baby is satisfied, the baby smiles. If the baby's diaper is dry, the baby smiles. If the baby's content, the baby sleeps. It's a natural life. The baby is experiencing a natural existence, right? And then the baby gets a name and a personality, and when that happens, the baby decides that it has to avoid discomfort. It has to seek comfort. So the game starts to get played, and it's an unworkable reality. It's a condition in which there is no lasting satisfaction. It's a condition in which there is no lasting happiness, and certainly there's no peace. That's why we say rest in peace when somebody dies. So this teaching is telling us there's this possibility to wake up from what? They call it a dream. To wake up from this process of thinking all the time and believing what you're thinking, believing that I am this character with this name, I am this physical body, I do have a story that's my life, right? All of the way things appear isn't just an appearance, it's real, it's affecting me, it scares me, or it makes me happy sometimes, right? So I have this relationship with the world and with other people and with life. But over time, you discover it's not stable and it doesn't really work. It never produces contentment or satisfaction or happiness, and it gets worse over time. And in the end of the process, what you get to do is die. You get to disappear. You get to go away. And you don't know where you're going because nobody can report back from there, right? So there's religions that say, oh, you can have faith in where you're going, you can believe in where you're going. But for most of us, that's not enough. That's not enough. We're not sure at all that any of that stuff's true. So we're really trying to make the best of this existence before it's over. And it's not, as you get older, the inevitables occur. You know, the body starts to fall apart. Old age, sickness, and death occurs to all human beings. And between now and when that begins to happen, life is unpredictable. You don't know in the morning if you're going to see the evening. You don't know if when you drive your car, if you're going to get in a serious accident and die or be crippled, right? So you're living under this pressure, under this stress all the time, you know, trying to avoid being a character, trying to avoid being one of the characters that's announced in the news. And then this possibility starts to come to life in terms of, well, if you sit still and practice long enough, something starts to become apparent. And what starts to become apparent is this awareness that's been there all along, been there all the time, but it went unnoticed, right? Because you weren't paying attention to that. You were paying attention to the world. You were paying attention to the story. You were paying attention to your identity. And you were living that life, constantly living that life, thinking about it, worrying about it, having your feelings about it, and so forth, moving around in the world as an action figure, trying to make it all work. So, through learning about this, through the teachings tell us that if you wake up and you come out of this dream, this make-believe reality that got put together that's called the human life, if you wake up, that you're free. You're free from the suffering that is involved in living in this existence. And not only are you free from the suffering, but you have a transcendental experience. You realize that the human body, the form that you're in, is temporary, and it's not actually the truth of what you are. These are the teachings. And the teachings promise us freedom, and they promise us satisfaction, well-being, and happiness. But you have to practice in order to realize that promise, right? So that's why meditation without the teachings doesn't really have a lot of depth to it. It might be good for stress reduction, but with the teachings, it offers a promise that can be fulfilled by the practice of meditation. A leaf on a tree, right? A leaf on a tree sprouts, right? It sprouts under the right conditions, right? And it exists for a certain amount of time. It experiences different weather conditions, right? It experiences getting nutrition, you know, from the sun and from water, right? And then at some point it dies and it drops off the tree and goes into the ground and becomes soil, and the soil becomes another tree, like that. The leaf didn't have any suffering, didn't have any problem. It did a perfect job as a leaf, right? If that same leaf were told that it had a name and a personality and it wasn't as good as other leaves, right? the process of suffering would begin for the leaf, right? The reason I'm using the leaf as an example here is because the difference between a leaf and a human life, right, is that in a human life, before we get a name and before we take a form and have an identity, we're as free as the leaf is. A baby is as free as the leaf is, right? And then we go into the personality, we go into the learned, conditioned understanding of what we are and what reality is, and then the craziness begins. We become a psychological entity. A leaf is not a psychological entity, right? So for the human life, we live a brief experience as compared to even recorded time. We live a brief experience as this crazy person, and then we die. Well, the reality of it is, it's a ruse. It's not actually happening. It's not actually happening. Behind the scenes, you and I are as free as the leaf all along, as free as the leaf all along. All we have to do is recognize that the story and the form and the conditioning are superficial. They're not real. They're not real in this most important way, right? Your personality does not have awareness. The personality is not conscious. It doesn't have awareness. It's not alive. And when I say that, what I'm saying is who you think you are is not alive. Who you think you are is a mental process. Who you think you are is something that doesn't actually exist in the sense that it is not alive, it's not awake, it's not aware, right? No wonder it's not satisfying, right? It's not satisfying to be something that's not alive, right? No wonder it's not satisfying. So what we learn to be is not alive. But behind what we learned that we are, there is an alive, awake awareness. It's there all the time, right? But it's being ignored by most of us, and the conditioning is what we have our attention on, and the life of the body and the life of the personality is what we keep our attention on, just like everybody else, right? In the meantime, just like the life of the leaf, right, it goes unlived. The life of most human beings goes unlived. It's not being lived. It's not being lived because the awareness that's the real, actual existence of the human life is in the background, right? It's not changing, it's always there, it's stable, it's real, it's alive. It has its own inherent experience of being satisfied, happy, and peaceful. It's there all along, right? But we're trying to get what it has to offer us from the world. We're trying to get what it has to offer us from the world. Everybody wants to be happy, everybody wants to be satisfied, everybody wants to be peaceful. Well, how are we trying to get that? In the conditioned version of ourselves, it looks like the only way to get that is to get it from the world, right? So we're going to pursue happiness, like in the Constitution. You have the right to do that. You can pursue happiness. We're going to pursue it, right? Or you're going to pursue satisfaction, you're going to pursue peace, right, in the world. And it can't be found in the world, so that never happens, and you can spend your entire life trying. However, according to the teachings and these practices, if you do the practices and you study the teachings and you come to an understanding of what the truth is, and then you do the practices to actually experience that truth, right, then what was missing isn't missing anymore. Because your attention turns backwards, turns away from the world, and starts looking at the truth, starts looking at the reality of what you actually are. And once you make contact with that reality, right? Once you make contact with that reality, there's an immediate relief, immediate relief. The pressure is off because you realize the gig is up. You are not the personality, you're not the physical body, you're not the name. That's just a condition that exists for you to be in time and space and live a human life. But it's not real and it's not what you are. And when you get that experientially, your life transforms. When you get that experientially, now your life isn't about trying to get happy. Your life is not about trying to get satisfied. It's not about trying to be peaceful, because now you have that. It's a constant experience that's yours all the time. It is your natural state. It is the way it is. It is the truth. And once that's realized, in the beginning, it's only realized momentarily, right? There are people here who I've talked to who have told me that they have had moments in their life, and probably a lot of the rest of you have too, had moments in your life, even if it was only for a brief period of time. Sometimes it can be a day. Sometimes it can be a week or even longer if you're practicing meditation, where something shifts and all of a sudden, even though the world is still the way it is, nothing's changed in terms of the world being the way it is, but you're happy now and satisfied because why? Because what's happening in the world is no longer happening to you, it's happening to the character that you learned you are, right? But that doesn't bother you because you're really not that character, right? You're the awareness that's aware of that character. That's the shift. You become what you are, the awareness aware of life, the awareness aware of the body, the awareness aware of thinking, the awareness aware of emotions. And this is a transformation. This is a transformation, and it creates a transcendental experience. The experience of it being transcendental means that you can be in the character that you've learned that you are and know that it's not real. So what happens is now you're like a good actor playing a script, a role in a play, right? Just like you're the personality, you're like a good actor playing your personality instead of being your personality. The awareness is playing your personality, it's not being your personality. And the awareness knows that the personality is just a process. It's just a conditioned process. It's just a script you've learned to play. And because that's the case, the effect of it is no longer there. Because that's the case, the experience you're having now is transcendental. That you can play full out, you can play with abandon now, you can really be a fulfilled personality because you know you're not a personality. Just like an actor in a play can fulfill on the character in the play, can be a good version of that character. If the character's crazy, they're going to be a good crazy character. But the actor, when they're playing that role in the play, is unaffected by what's happening to that character. That's the transformation that occurs, and that's the transcendence that occurs from learning to practice meditation.